subscribers, viewers, elves, men, dwarfs, and any other supernatural thing that I cannot think of because it's wasted time. I see your eyes. I see the way that you look at this review. I see the way that this is my 150th video. And I could have picked another video to review this movie in. That could have been the day that I could have picked another video to do for this review. But it is not this day. Because this day, you'll never know when the days of not being able to do the fantastic review or watch the perfect movie will be. Because that is not this day. This day, we do it. We fight our way through an over 4-hour movie to watch The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. And I think I needed something to be able to handle this. The sword that's only made out of wood. It's not made of steel. That's way too much money. Hey guys, it's Daniel here, and this time is a very, very special time for me to do something. Why? Well, for two major reasons. First of all, this video that you're watching right now is my 150th video. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, I didn't think I would reach this far, but, well, I had to have reached this far, but hey, here we are, and thank you guys for sticking with me for 150 videos. It must have been very painful. And the second reason is, judging by the opening, the sword, and the Blu-ray pack behind me, I am finally here to fulfill my review of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Yes, I've already reviewed Fellowship of the Ring, I've already reviewed Two Towers, which means that there can only be one more film in this almost perfect franchise. Because today, I am finally here to review the final installment in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. Wow, this is going to be a very epic mountain to climb. As long as it's not in Mordor. So, without further ado, grab your swords, let's talk about Return of the King. So, the plot of this epic, well thought out, and drastically emotional ending to the franchise is that after the events of the Two Towers, our characters are still on their missions to save Middle-earth, but it's almost over because Frodo, Sam, and Gollum are still making their way into Mount Doom. Gollum is trying to separate Frodo and Sam's friendship because he keeps making Frodo think that Sam is doing all these things. Sam sees what Gollum is doing, but Frodo is not able to tell if his best friend is telling the truth because all he can think about is the ring. He's so drawn to the ring and it's destroying his body inside, and Gollum really wants the ring all for himself after Two Towers. So now Frodo and Sam are being tested by Gollum, and their friendship is slowly starting to drift away, but they're still trying to make their way to Mount Doom to throw the ring in the fire. Meanwhile, Aragorn, Gandalf, Gimli, Legolas, King Theoden, Eowyn, and many other members, knights and all that stuff, they are trying to gather every single fighter, every single man, and every single individual from each land of Middle-earth. They are trying to make themselves a huge army to come together to fight off against Sauron and his army in order to take out as many orcs as they can, as well as trying to give Sam and Frodo enough time to get the ring to the mountain, throw it into the fire, and save Middle-earth once and for all. Now, there was a lot riding on this movie when it first came out. I mean, every single Lord of the Rings fan were looking forward to seeing this movie, and it was the most pressure-making film of 2003. And then, once it came out in cinemas, it was not only the most popular film of 2003, but it was also the most rewarded film of 2003, because I'm not even joking, it won every single Oscar that it was nominated for. Yes, I said that. It won 11 goddamn Oscars. I mean, wow, that rarely happens a lot in films nowadays, so what? That's just a detriment as to what I'm going to be describing this movie as in this review. Last year when I saw the Lord of the Rings trilogy for the first time, after watching Return of the King, I was just like, it gave me a new way of how I look at films, because they can make the longest films they want and still make them really enthralling, because there was a reason why these Lord of the Rings films are over 3 hours to 4 hours long, because, well, so much is going on. I mean, all the characters are in different places and all that. So, remember my reviews of Fellowship of the Ring and Two Towers? Well, those are my reviews of the theatrical versions. So, to prepare myself for my review of Return of the King, I watched the extended editions almost back to back. I didn't marathon them all the way through in one day, but I watched them in a few days during the week. I first watched Fellowship of the Ring in the extended edition, then I watched the Two Towers in the extended edition, and this is going to be my review of the extended edition of Return of the King. And after watching this film, I don't even know where to begin. I'm just enthralled by how perfect this movie is. It's so good. I mean, this movie just made me look at the way I see finale films nowadays, because it's got to be one of the greatest ones I've ever seen. I mean, I haven't seen this good of a finale since probably Avengers Endgame, maybe. I mean, if I watch Avengers Endgame now again, I'll try to compare the two and see which one I like more, but this movie just... I'm just going to say this right now, this is my favourite Lord of the Rings film. The movie has it all. Drama, suspense, humour, action, terror, genuine moments, character deaths, very satisfying conclusions to our characters, and it just like has almost all of the things I would expect from this type of film. I mean, there are some scenes that leave you like satisfied, there are scenes that make you laugh, there are scenes that make you like on the edge of your seat, there might be even some scenes that make you feel a little angry of what you're seeing, because you're like, what? No, don't. I don't like seeing that. It's so bad that it's good. I mean, wow. Seriously. Where do I begin? Well, first of all, this movie is both hopefulness and hopelessness, because almost every character in this movie are in different places. But this movie is the one where most of the characters come together, mainly on Aragorn's side. Like, all those knights and fighters are coming together to face off against Sauron and his army. And you almost feel like, yeah, they're gonna win the day! And then all of a sudden a stupid, evil Sauron just makes obstacles and death threats to these characters that you feel like, oh, no, please, no. I mean, there's a little bit of a sense of hopelessness in the movie, because almost every single character are basically asking themselves what exactly they can do. I think the whole hopefulness and hopelessness in this movie is definitely credited down to the direction by Peter Jackson. I mean, he pressured himself so hard to make this movie, or at least from what I've experienced from the movie, I felt like he did try very hard, and he succeeded definitely, because he writes some of the most greatest and most enthralling characters ever experienced in a fantasy film. I mean, he can write the most, and this is the most emotional story ever seen, because there are so many moments in this movie, a lot of moments that just make you feel empty. It almost changes a man. I mean, I don't think I've been so desperate and almost very hopefulness and hopelessness and so emotionally touched until I saw Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. Because they just hit me right here. I mean, the moments with Sam and Frodo, the moments with Aragorn and Arwen, the moments with Gandalf and the hobbits and all that, the ending is just, it's just heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak that adds to the perfectness of this film. But that's not to say that the film is lacking in humour because of its heavy story, because it still has so many funny and hilarious moments, especially with Pippin, Merry, Gimli, and Gollum. Those four characters were hilarious as hell. Like, you'd expect Gollum to be very, threatening, and yes, he is definitely threatening, but he still has the humour that makes us love him, but he also has the threateningness that makes us hate him a few times as well. So, yeah, that's... However, not only are there so many emotional moments and so many hilarious moments, but there are also some awesome cheering moments in this movie. I mean, there are many big things that happen in this film that just makes you want to get up and say, yes! 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 Oh my god, that was... Oh! There's a scene where Aragorn goes into a cavern to find these, like, ghost people to include them in this war, and then Legolas and Gimli are like, this looks like a death sentence. I mean, they don't literally say that, but they think that, and Aragorn just stares at them and they're like, I do not fear death. And he just walks into that cavern, you're like, ooh, that was so intense. Yet again, awesome. And of course, since this is the finale to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the characters and the actors need to give their best, and they certainly do. I love every single character in this film. Frodo is just at his low in this movie. I mean, he is so drawn to the ring, and so, like, what is going on? How can I trust my best friend anymore because of what I'm going through with the ring? And you just see his body starting to crumble. His, like, sanity starts to crumble. You see his eyes, they're, like, red and all that, and his skin is just red, and his temper issue is just, like, reaching high. You just fear for his life, but you're also, like, hoping, come on, you're so close. Elijah Wood still kills it as Frodo. Ian McKellen still steals the movie as Gandalf, because he's probably the most fighting warrior that he's ever been in these movies, because he's just, like, leading the people of Gondor into war and all that, and you just see the progression in his eyes, but at the same time you see a bit of fear in his eyes that we haven't seen him like that before. I mean, we have, but not at this level, and Ian McKellen does a fantastic job presenting that. I'm gonna miss him as the character. As for Merry and Pippin, this is the movie where they both finally mature, because in Two Towers, Merry is the one who matures as he encourages the Ents to go to war, but this is the movie where Pippin starts to mature as he starts working for the ruler of Gondor, but he starts to realise how much danger he's put himself through, and Gandalf's just like, oh no, you fool of a took, what? Look what you just got yourself into. And now he is just trying his best to prove his worth. And what's one of the things that he does? He sings a battle song. Yeah, some people might find it a bit weird that he sings during the battle to the ruler, but it just adds to the desperation to the film and makes Billy Boyd come off as a pretty good singer, as we heard from his singing in this film, and the singing that he will give in the song The Last Goodbye in The Hobbit. Eowyn is one of the biggest standouts of this film, because while she didn't manage to do a lot in Two Towers besides stand around and trying to help out her people, this is the movie where she finally includes herself into battle. I mean, the fight at Gondor, she is just holding her sword and going head to head against orcs and the Witch King and Mumakil and the feral beasts and all that. She is just an awesome fighter, and I really like the chemistry between her and Merry. They seem like they're good, and you can see the protection that Eowyn wants to give to Merry in her eyes. So, well done and all that. Now, there are 3 standout characters in this film that made me appreciate the movie even more. The first one is Gollum. I thought he was absolute fun in Two Towers, but he is downright diabolical in The Return of the King, because after Two Towers, he is planning to get the ring for himself and planning to get Sam and Frodo killed in the process, and you see the manipulative in his eyes, like,
I know what I'm doing. I'm gonna kill the hobbits. I'm gonna take the places. We see the places in the tunnels and take it from me.
I would do better with a Gollum impression, but not now. He felt like even more diabolical in this film than he did in Two Towers, but there's a scene with his past in the beginning of the movie, how he first got the ring, how the ring has affected him, and you start to understand why he is so enticed by it, because in Two Towers, you learn about his character, and you learn how he used to be someone else, but we never got to see who he was before he became Gollum. But this is the movie where Gollum is fleshed out even more, and it makes him even more fleshed out and intimidating. And again, it's brought up through the motion performance of Andy Serkis. The second standout character in this movie is Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn. And the reason why he's one of the standouts is because this felt like his film in a few ways, mainly because the title of the movie, Return of the King, is referencing him becoming the future king that he was meant to be of Gondor and leading his followers into war. And this is where he comes into his own as a king, as he leads his people to victory, encourage them to keep fighting, encourage them that even though dark times appear, there's still light and all that. And I absolutely adored Viggo Mortensen's performance. He kind of reminds me of the Captain America Han Solo mushed together type, as well as just being incredibly awesome, and he was the fitting character to be for the title Return of the King, because he definitely felt like a king. However, one of the reasons why this film felt superior to the first 2 films is because of the character that is a royal friend, and in my opinion, the real hero of The Lord of the Rings. That character being Samwise Gamgee. Wow. This is the best I've ever seen Sam in the franchise, because while the title Return of the King does reference Aragorn, in my opinion this movie felt like Sam's movie, because this is the movie where he felt like the real hero of Lord of the Rings, because he supports Frodo so damn much. But once Frodo realizes that he can no longer trust Sam anymore, Sam is royally broken up about it, and you're like, oh, I just want to give him a big old hug, come on. But even though his friend is feeling untrustworthy to him, he does not hesitate but to still stand by his side, because he fights a lot of threats in this movie. I mean, he is a strong, capable warrior with a big heart and a lot of passion. He even goes to great lengths to get Frodo to the mountain a lot of the times, even if it means like almost risking his own life. He almost sacrifices himself a few times, but he still is willing to do what it takes to save Middle-earth. And that's what makes his character so inspiring. A perfect role model. When we feel, I ended up caring about his character so much in this film. He felt like the real main character of Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. This is his film in a lot of ways, and you end up caring about him so much. You feel like upset when he's sad. You feel delighted when he inspires Frodo with many great speeches and all that. You feel pumped up when he's awesome in battle, being a capable fighter hobbit. But you also fear for him once he gets in danger a lot of the times. And you feel satisfied for him during the end because the closure that they gave his character, I couldn't ask for a better conclusion for Samwise Gamgee. It made me so happy for him, and it's all brought out by the beautiful and genuine performance by Sean Astin. I'm starting to realise that he's a fantastic actor and all that, and I cannot wait to see more with him. I loved him in Stranger Things, and I loved him in Lord of the Rings. That was an out of nowhere rhyme. But still, Samwise Gamgee, I think you're the real heart of the franchise, okay? I think Sam is probably my favourite Lord of the Rings character. He felt like the real hero of the movie. And in the words of Frodo Baggins, I'm glad to be with you, Samwise Gamgee, here at the end of all things. Now, like I said, this is my review of the extended edition of Return of the King, so there's going to be way more scenes that weren't in the theatrical cut, of course. And honestly, a lot of the scenes that were in the extended edition, I felt like they should have been in the theatrical cut because they would have made the theatrical cut make a little bit more sense. I mean, there's the extended scene with Saruman. I won't say what the scene is, but I personally wish that scene was in the theatrical cut. If you don't know what I mean, well, watch the theatrical cut first, and then watch the extended edition, and you'll see what I mean. I think it would be best if you saw the movies in their extended editions, because it makes you see, like, the whole trilogy, everything that happens in the trilogy, that makes it even more satisfying. The action is superb. I mean, this is the most action-liked film in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The two best action scenes being the battle at Gondor and the final fight in the movie. Those two action scenes were awesome. Everybody's like beating each other up, everyone's just slashing swords at each other, many characters just like going heads to heads with each other. It's just a huge war that is just awesome. I would not change anything about these fights. They are so good. And of course, the film's climax. It was everything that the trilogy built it up to be. The final hour of this film is where everything comes to a head. Every character are in their position to finish up what they started, and the way that it just pays off was satisfying because it's everything that they built it up to be for 3 movies, and after everything, it is such a beautiful delight, and so happy to see our characters finally achieve their goals and end up in the places where they were meant to be. Because, with no spoilers involved, the way how the film concludes was perfect. Now, people had some issues with the ending. People say that it's way too long and that it goes overboard, and it felt like it was going to end up at some point and all that, but I think the ending is perfect because the closure, like, we needed to give closure to our characters and we had to see what they were fighting for. I think it's one of the reasons why I love the ending to Avengers Endgame so much, because it showed our characters, like, how they ended up and how they're going to be, like. But this is like the final film ever in the trilogy. There's no more spin-offs going on. Well, there was with The Hobbit, but that was a prequel. There's no sequels or spin-offs after The Lord of the Rings, so this is the final chapter. This is the final time we're seeing our characters. And I thought that these characters were given the most perfect closures, ending to story arcs ever put to film. It was a great way to end the trilogy, and it made it probably the greatest trilogy of all time. One of the main reasons why it's so beautiful is because of the excellent score by Howard Shore. I forgot to mention that. Howard Shore's score, no rhyme intended, was amazing, adding some epic tracks, but also emotional tracks, but also uplifting tracks as well. But it's not just Shore's score that makes the music epic in the movie, but because you can't end a beautifully perfect franchise without having a beautifully perfect ending song in the end credits. I'm of course talking about Annie Lennox's Into the West, which appears in the end credits, which is the perfect song to put in a finale.
What can you see on the horizon? Why do the white gulls call?
We're finally here to talk about the final grade I will give Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King, because honestly, I have no problems with this movie at all. It is the most emotional and beautiful way to close off a perfect trilogy. This movie made me so happy with its characters, especially, again, Sam. Everything that they did with Sam's character in this film and the beautiful performance they give with Sean Astin is amazing. And the closure that they gave his character, again, I couldn't have asked for a better conclusion. It made me so happy for him. And honestly, with all that said, I am going to give Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King, as well as the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy, a very high, well, you all know what it is, 5 out of 5. It's a masterpiece. I'm telling you, masterpiece. It shows how fantasy films can not just be movies and entertainment, it can be art. And you should definitely go see the movie. And I just feel so sad because this trilogy is over and that we can't see Middle-earth again. I mean, granted, you could see Middle-earth again because the Hobbit trilogy did manage to satisfy people who missed going back to Middle-earth. And I think I might watch and review the Hobbit trilogy later on, some other time. But honestly, it's never going to capture the magic of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, because Return of the King is my favourite of the trilogy, one of the greatest movies of all time, to fit for probably the greatest movie trilogy of all time. But enough fangazzing about what I think, although I want to do more fangazzing. But what do you think of Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King, as well as the whole franchise? You've got to be a lover, a craver for this franchise. You have to think it's one of the greatest movie trilogies of all time. If you don't, well, okay, whoever hates it just hates movies. If you are bored by these movies, I think a lot of movies bore you, but hey, you know, whatever. I'm not mad. Clearly I'm not mad. And which is your favourite movie in this trilogy? Let me know in the comment section below. And I cannot wait to have kids of my own so that I can introduce them to this franchise and tell them how much your daddy loved this franchise. And I will try to get more videos done soon. But until then, I'm Daniel, reviewing movies, TV shows, doing videos, and showing this sword one last time to show you how much I crave this trilogy and how much I'm going to miss going back to the characters of Middle-earth. Till then, peace out, man.